Oh, the flag stays down. Heaney! Oh!
They scored again! It's Davis again! It's job done now!
Hello everyone and welcome to the first edition of the Northern Ireland podcast with Adam and Andy.
Every show we want to give you an insight into the Northern Ireland national team. We want to make it as interactive as possible, so be sure to send us your questions and topics because we want to hear from you.
So let's get on with the first podcast and introduce today's guest.
With the new stadium and everything's positive, and hopefully it leaves a legacy. I just want every young boy, wherever you're from in Northern Ireland, wherever you grow up, I want you to play for Northern Ireland.
Gentlemen, please give it up for Michael O'Neill.
So welcome to the Northern Ireland podcast. Obviously today we're joined by manager Michael O'Neill, who is our guest today. Thanks Michael for coming on. Basically our thoughts for this is to try and find out a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes in terms of analysis, you know, the likes of you and Austin and Jimmy Nick and Mike Taylor, everything that goes on behind the scenes. And for us personally, it's kind of all come off of the Bielsa stuff at Leeds, and actually that triggered our thoughts to going, well, what happens with our team behind the scenes? And I'm sure there's a lot that we obviously don't see you do.
Yeah, there is. There's an awful lot of preparation goes into any international game, and it's a little bit more challenging, I think, than possibly club football, because although you've got longer period of time between the games, you have less games to go off, obviously, and the games are spread out. So, for example, you know, if I look back to, you know, the qualification for Euro 2016, we were in a 16 group, but by the time the group ended, 4 of the managers had changed. So, you know, watching, we played Hungary obviously in game 1, then we played them in game 8. It was a different manager. So whilst the players are the same, how they're prepared and how the manager sets the team up had changed quite a bit. So those are all challenges I think that you face in international management sometimes, and it can be quite sudden in the sense that a manager just comes in possibly at short notice, and you have to deal with that as well. What we do an awful lot of work in the opposition, and we obviously look at their system of play, where we feel they're strong, where we feel they're weak, their key players. Allied to that, obviously the style of the manager as well, because sometimes you go in, like we saw a situation where Claudio Ranieri managed Greece. So you have an Italian manager coming in to manage Greek players. There's a difference in style, there's a difference in culture. So, trying to understand what Ranieri will do with those players as well is a bit of a challenge. And then the real difficult time as well is the turnaround between the games, because obviously the most relevant game is the last game that they play. So, for example, in a double header, the most relevant game will be, say, Germany's game on a Friday if we were playing them on a Monday. And then we have to try and decipher that information very quickly. Try and read what the German coach will do based on how that game went. And sometimes, coaches just maybe will go, right, it's the same team again. So, what you've looked at in the previous 10, 12 months is maybe not that relevant. And that is the other challenge, is the time frame in international football is you could be looking at maybe 3 or 4 games back only, but it could be 8 months ago. And that in itself is different from what you would have in club football, whereas, I think the Bielsa one's very interesting. I'm not convinced they watched 51 games of Derby, to be honest, but I'm sure they did very, very detailed analysis of the opposition, and that's a big part of his preparation of the team.
Is there times maybe when you've done a lot of preparation and then you get to a match and maybe something happens in a match, and all those weeks and months that you've put into it, you've just went, no, I need to do something here that you hadn't prepared for at all?
Oh yeah, totally. You try and develop sort of a system that you can go to at different stages of the game, but it's very difficult to do that in international football because your time frame of the players is so short. If we were playing on a Thursday, the players arrive on a Sunday. Some may not even arrive to the Monday, depending on the travel. It can be quite difficult, particularly here. It's quite difficult to get people back to Northern Ireland from a regional airport on a Sunday night if they're playing. So sometimes players don't arrive to the Monday. That's really essentially a recovery day, which means you've got 2 days to prepare the team, which is a really short window to be able to do it. And if you're wanting to do something different, that makes that more challenging as well. Leading into France, where we had more time, You know, we worked on 2 systems of play, playing with 3 at the back and playing 4-3-3, which we had typically done. And I think a lot of that work has stood us in good stead because a lot of those players are still with us. So I think when you have that period of time, you can bed things in. And there's no coincidence to me that the teams that continually qualify every 2 years, they get that period every 2 years of long-term preparation. And I think you see that consistently, and it's typically obviously the bigger teams as well. So, but you always have to be prepared for something, you know. More often than not, it'll be individual, you know, like just, I didn't envisage that we would play Jordan Jones, for example, in the World Cup qualifying game away in Switzerland, but he was so sharp in training like the previous 2 days that my gut instinct was to put him on the pitch at that point in time. It was a really key moment in the game, like I think 15-20 minutes to go. We were obviously chasing the 1-0 deficit from the first leg, and sometimes things like that are just more off your instinct than actual planning as well, because you know, you prepare all the way up to the game, but ultimately what happens in the game, it can totally undo what your preparation is, so you have to be able to think on your feet and obviously adapt to that as well.
So what sort of things are you looking at? That's what I find interesting, is when you're looking, say, like you just said, you play in Germany, say, and you're watching their game back on the Friday for the Monday. Is there certain elements that you're trying to pick out from their game?
Yeah, we look at, you know, typically what, you know, for example, do they play from the back? If they do play from the back, what is their, you know, what shape they're in to play from the back? Is there a consistent pattern in that? For example, do they go to the right side of centre back more than the left side of centre back? If that is the case, is that because one is stronger on the ball than the other one? If we feel there's a particular weakness in a team in that situation, we'll try and force them to that side of the pitch in terms of how we prepare. And then we have to make a decision on whether we're going to, you know, based on how we feel they are in possession of the ball, will we press them and will we press high up the pitch, which is a, you know, a lot of teams are trying to do now. It's a little bit more difficult to do that in international football, but again, because of the time frame to train your team and get it into their mindset that that's a big part of how they're going to play. It's difficult in the preparation time, but I think we've done that well in recent games as well. So it's just about pinpointing those little things within teams. You know when we played Portugal a few years back, we worked very hard on, you know, how we would deny getting the ball to Cristiano Ronaldo, and we did that brilliantly in Portugal, and you know, we almost won the game. We drew it, and here we did it really well for 60 minutes until the game. You know, we had 2 men sent off, they had a man sent off. And then there was too much space and we couldn't contain Ronaldo, and he scored a hat-trick. So those are all things that happen through the game as well. I think we always look at, you know, there's so much data that is available to us, not only just the running stats, but the passing stats, where teams have possession. I always look at the individual heat maps of the players, so, you know, identifies where the player has had touches of the ball on the pitch. And we looked very closely at that before we played Wales, because obviously we recognised that Bale was a huge threat, but we needed to see where that threat was going to come from, how we would deal with that threat. And we did, you know, we recognised that when you looked at the statistics that, you know, Aaron Ramsey passed the ball to Gareth Bale more than he did to any other player in the Wales team. So, you know, we set out to try and stop Ramsey from doing that, and we contained Bale very well in that game. Ultimately, it was a Bale-Ramsey combination that led to the goal, you know, and players of that quality they're very difficult to contain for 90 minutes, and we did a great, you know, I think if you look back at that tournament, possibly the game against us was Gareth Bale's maybe quietest game of the tournament. So they're all little things that you look at. You know, you're obviously looking recently playing against, you know, Austria. Like Arnautovic is a huge threat, but where does he go on the pitch? Where does he spend his time? Where does he get the touches? You know, because he's a clever player, and how will we deal with that? Because it's quite difficult for the 2 centre backs at times to understand where the threat from the striker is going to come from. Again, that combination against Bosnia of Panic and Dzeko was a big part of their team as well. So any kind of little piece of information is important. People always talk about possession stats and what level of possession you have. And possession's a funny one, because the most important thing is where you have the possession. Really, for me, is that, like, you know, a team who has 60% possession in their own half is not going to score. It's about your ability to have possession in the final third of the pitch, and then your quality in terms of what you do with that possession, and that's again a factor of teams where you can plan off that and think, well, we'll be a counter-attacking team tonight, or whether we go and be a high-pressure team.
Those kind of stats, like the heat maps and all that, is that something that's been relatively new in your career, or is that something you've always had available to you?
Well, it's relatively new, to be honest, and it's continually evolving. I think in many sports the whole Moneyball thing was a bit of a watershed. People started to then really think, well, statistically, we need to start to look at the game a lot closer. I still think football is the game that is least aligned with statistics, because there's so many variables in a football match. Every time a player receives the ball, he has to make a decision. We don't know what that decision may be, and the opposition have to make a decision in response to that. So when you have so many variables, the statistics at times doesn't always tell the true story of the game. I think in a more structured game like baseball, for example, or like rugby, the decision making for the player is much more limited. Baseball's a case of whether you can hit it, and whether you can catch it, and whether you can get to first base. And rugby, every play is a lot more structured, whereas in football the variables make it a little more difficult, I think. But there's more and more information coming out in players all the time. It's very useful, I think, as much as anything in your team preparation, in terms of understanding, making sure that the players peak at the right level for the game, so you're not overtraining players as well. But ultimately, in terms of preparation, like I always say this to any coach, particularly younger coaches, like the information that you produce, it's only as good as the person that's receiving it, i.e. do they understand it, and do they understand what it's for? Because some players still don't really put that much emphasis on it. They're not sitting there, clambering for statistical information in the opposition. They, a lot of players concentrate more on themselves. And I was recently at a conference in Manchester that Pep Guardiola spoke, and he said, 3-4 years ago, and even in Barcelona, he would watch the last 3-4 games of the opposition, and really break it down and decipher it. Whereas now he only watches 10-15 minutes of the opposition, which has been prepared for him by his analysts, and then his focus is now more on his team, because you have to split your balance of your time, and so he said now he's come away from that, and that maybe that comes with time as well. And if you've got players of that ability, you can trust them a bit more as well. But it's interesting, because there is, and the information that is out there is only going to continue to develop. Particularly now, if we see the introduction of VAR and everything more, the technology, more and more technology coming into the game. We're also seeing, I think FIFA now, for example, are going to allow us to have an iPad in the dugout. So you'll probably be able to watch things back that happened during the game. So it's a wee bit more like that rugby model where the coach essentially manages from up the stairs. So these are all things that I think in the the years to come is going to become just standard practice for coaches.
I was thinking back to the Euros, and I think the main thing everyone thought of was obviously you played Poland and lost to Poland, and then you made 5 changes to the game against Ukraine. I know it's one that we are obviously all pinpointing, that we wanted to win and thought we could beat Ukraine. When you made those 5 changes, was that based on analysis from the previous game? Was it something you had preempted that you may do anyway?
It certainly wasn't preempted. We did think that we would have to change the system. We played with 3 at the back against Poland because we knew they would play with 2 up front, Milik and Lewandowski, and we just felt having an extra centre backer in there would make us stronger against Lewandowski in particular. And again, in the game, Lewandowski did very little in the game. The 3 centre backs played him really well. Unfortunately, it was Milik that scored the goal that it was a poor goal for us to lose in the game. But one of the things that affected us as well in the lead up to France was the loss of Chris Brunt, because we had no left back essentially to play. We didn't have a left back, and so to get our best players in the team, we had to play with 3 at the back. And Stuart did a great job for us on the left, and we played with various people in terms of the right wing back, or Aaron played in that position. But when we played Ukraine, we knew we'd have to play with 4 at the back, because their biggest threat was their 2 white players, Yarmolenko and Konoplyanka. So we'd already prepared for that. We'd already prepared for Johnny to play at left back in that game. But the main thing in terms of the personnel changes between game 1 and game 2 was statistical. 2 things. It was watching the game back where I felt we were poor. It was the running distances that we covered were not high enough. the intensity of our running wasn't high enough. And I think that was a combination of two things. I think first of all it was the occasion. For some of the players it was the biggest game of their lives. But for all of them internationally it was the biggest game of their lives because none of them had played in a major tournament before. So I think there was a nervousness in the team, and also it was very hot. I don't know if you remember back the heat. It was played at I think 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it certainly didn't suit us in terms of the kick-off time, and that was a factor in it as well. And I think in that game we were 102 kilometres as a team that we covered, but in the next 3 games we were 115. So it was almost like every player was running a kilometre more in the game. Subsequently, so that was a big factor. I felt we had to get legs in the team, so Corey comes in, plays a Chris Baird. I felt Conor McLaughlin, possibly it was the right time to take Conor out. We put experience in and Aaron. I thought Aaron still was going to be able to deal with Canoply Anka on that side. Jamie Ward came in and gave us energy, and Jamie wasn't really fit going into the Euros, which was a problem as well. And he's always got some type of, Jamie always has like maybe a niggling injury, so you're always a little bit concerned that if you start him, you kind of know you're going to have to bring him off, which only leaves you with 2 substitutions, and that can be a little bit restrictive. So, and again, when we brought Conor in for Connor Washington, I just thought he would give us that energy and tempo at the top end of the pitch, and they did. And the 5 changes that we made, I think, re-energised the team and obviously got us through that game and took us to the last 16. But it was statistical, but it was also looking at, when you watch the video back, there was a little bit of uncertainty in the team, and I think that was a lot of that. It wasn't down to preparation because we were extremely well prepared for the first game. If anything, you could maybe say we were over prepared, but and there was just a bit of a nervousness I felt about the display at times, but the great thing is that we reacted well to that. And you always look at how far your team are going to run, because as a team for us, we knew going to France that we weren't going to become suddenly a 70% possession team against teams of this calibre. So if you're not going to be that type of team, then the distance that you cover is very important, because you're doing a lot of work off the ball. And clearly, as I say, in the Poland game, we weren't able to get to the levels that we got to in the next 3 games.
Cool. So we have a few questions sent in from the gala, and we've dubbed this section the Gala Zone.
Right. Okay.
So cue the Top Gun music.
Hi Michael, Daniel Newton here, and I'd like to know what you do in the long gaps in between games. Thanks.
I'd say he's probably talking football terms here.
Yeah,
well, whether he went to the cinema at the weekend.
Yeah, no. But look, it's funny. We talked about there's analysis of the opposition. First of all, you don't really ever get the chance to watch the opposition, because international football is obviously coordinated on the set calendar. But sometimes, something what I have done a wee bit more recently, and which we'll do, is if the opposition have maybe 1 or 2 special players, if I get the opportunity, I would go and watch them for their club. So just to get a feel for them and see and that, so we play Holland, so I'm hoping to, before we play Holland, that I'll get to see Ajax play, where there's 3 or 4 of the really good young Dutch players are now part of the Ajax team. And it's more difficult to do that with the German team, for example, because their players are scattered everywhere. It's more difficult to do that with Estonia or Belarus as well. But there's a lot of work on the opposition. But the main thing for us is, watching our own players and monitor our own players. And the other side of that is the development of the game. Like, we're doing a lot of stuff here in the IFA with the underage. We have a good team, and beneath me, and Ian Barraclough at 21, Stephen Frail at 17, 19. Andy Cousins, head of recruitment, and Jim at, in charge of like Club NI and sort of 16 down here. So all of that team, basically, I suppose we're responsible for football from, I suppose, the age of 12, 13 to senior international level. The rest of the staff, like Austin, Jimmy, Mike, they're basically all part-time. They Jimmy and Austin are working in clubs. Young Jack, the analyst, works at Hearts as well. And so we don't have staff that work consistently other than myself, to be honest. So probably, like, my workload is quite high, because if you compare it, say, to maybe England's and Gareth Southgate's, he maybe has a lot more players to watch, but then he's a lot more staff as well, and he has a lot more support maybe than an association the size of ours can have. So you do find that, you know, you don't have that much spare time, and a lot of people talk about it, but I kind of threw myself into all aspects of football, and that's as much a part of the enjoyment of the job as anything for me.
And just to follow up on that, when you go to a game, are you asking, like, say, clubs afterwards, oh, can I get the stats on blah blah who I just watched there? Is that sort of the thing that's done, or is it more of a you're just watching the game and just seeing how they're doing?
I'm more watching the game in terms of the performance. We do get that through the sports science thing. You know, our own sports scientists, Ricky McCann and Paul Walsh. Ricky works here at Linfield, and he works at Sinai, and Paul Walsh works at Sunderland. Clubs can be a little bit guarded on that as well. They're a little bit, but we do try and keep on top of things medically, in terms of if a player's injured, we know where exactly he's at, but in terms of his recovery, all of that kind of thing. And the clubs some are open, some are not. You know, they don't have to give you that information, but we kind of know where the players are. We obviously track all their minutes. We track every player every weekend. We basically I think we have somewhere in the region of about 100 and 110 players in the professional game in England and Scotland, and that is from 16. So basically, you know, any young player that is affiliated or signed by an English club, we track them as well. We track players in 21s and our 19s and up the senior squad. So we kind of know the progression of a lot of the lads, and you get patterns that you see there, because a big part for us is to keep as many of the players in the professional game as possible. We want to try and avoid lads coming back here to play or falling into non-league football in England, because ultimately, you know, they're hard to replace, and we hope that, you know, players can come. You know, good example is Jordan Thompson. We were a bit worried about Jordan. You know, he was let go by Man United. He went to Rangers. He had a couple of loans, one at Wraith Rovers that was just okay, I think, and then he went to Livingston and did well. But Livingston, for some reason, didn't sign him, and then he went to Blackpool, and now he's really kicked on, and now he's a player that we think, if he kicks on again, he's going to push. Now suddenly, you know, Jordan can push George Saville to be a starting player. He can push Corey Evans, Ollie Norwood, Stephen Davis, and that's what we want, you know. But you're always tracking the lads, because their career path is never one that's just always going up the way. You know, you look at Paddy McNair now; he's having a bit of a difficult time at Middlesbrough because he's not getting a lot of game time. So I can't speak to Paddy on a regular basis, because I do feel that Paddy's going to be, well, he is an important player for us, but I think in the future he's going to be a really key player for us. But he needs to get his club situation sorted out a little bit, and he needs a bit of support in that as well.
Yeah. Second one.
Hi Michael, Johnny Clark here, and my question is, who was your footballing idol growing up?
Well, it's dead easy that. When I was a Liverpool fanatic as a kid, so I had two. Kevin Keegan to begin with, and then I was devastated when Keegan left after Liverpool won the European Cup in '77, and thought it was the end of the world. I think I was only 8 at the time, cried my eyes out, but then God sent us Kenny Dalglish, and that was the best thing that it could have happened to us, to be honest. And so yeah, Kenny Dalglish was really my idol as a kid. You know, I just worshipped that Liverpool team, and I've had the good fortune to meet Kenny Dalglish and the likes of Graham Souness through various things, and I'm still a little bit, well, I must admit I'm not a little bit, I'm still quite in awe of the whole thing whenever I meet them. But that was my team. It was an era when Liverpool were such the most dominant team in English football, European football as well. So no, without a shadow of doubt, it was Kenny Dalglish.
I'm sure Johnny Clark, who has a Man United logo on his profile picture, will be
maybe regrets asking that question. Yeah.
There we go.
Hi Michael, my name's Stuart McCullough, and my question is, if you could take any player in today's game, change their nationality and draft them into your Northern Ireland squad, who would you go for? Cheers.
If I could take any player, that's a good... Difficult to say, because obviously the obvious ones are to say Ronaldo or Messi, or of course you'd take those players, but that would be a little bit obvious to say. Given the team that we are and the type of team, when you look around Europe, I would probably take Lewandowski, because I think he has the physical presence to be a good Northern Ireland centre forward, first of all, which we need, and he has the goal scoring ability, as his goal scoring record at international level shows. and he is a leader on the pitch as well, clearly. So he would possibly be the one player, I think, if you give me a chance of anyone now, he would be right at the top of the list.
Interesting, yeah. Wasn't expecting that, to be fair. But he wouldn't push Lafferty out of the squad, obviously.
Obviously. You have to wait his turn on the bench.
Yeah.
Hi there, Michael. My name's Peter Harrison, and I'd like to know, which player do you think has developed the most under your management?
Player, I think players have developed. There's players I think who have developed, and then there's players who I think who have played possibly their best international football. You know, I think Johnny's played consistently well for us now for a number of years. I'd put Stephen in that bracket as well, and you know, Gareth. You know, when I came in and took the squad, Gareth was like, under the previous managers, Gareth often played at right back. He didn't play very much in his own position, and I think he was a little bit, you know, he's 31 I think at the time, even more, he must have been older than that actually, 32 possibly, and he was a little bit disillusioned with the whole thing. And I look at Gareth now, and he's 80 caps for Northern Ireland, he's scored in a major final, he's captained the team, he's recently been awarded an MBE, so you know, he's made incredible, I think, and in the international stage, and it coincided with him going to the Premier League in the period he had in the Premier League with West Bromwich Albion as well. In the younger side of things, you know, I look at Ollie Norwood. He was over 50 caps now. I think Ollie had 3 or 4 when I came in. Corey the same. Corey had a little bit more than Ollie, but still now is over 50 caps. But when I look at all of the players, I suppose the one player that kind of gives me the most sort of satisfaction in the whole thing is Dallas, to be honest, is Stuart, because you know, when I came into the job, Stuart, the first game I went to see as Northern Ireland manager was Crusaders in the League Cup final. I can't even remember who they were playing. They might have been playing Cliftonville. I think it was Cliftonville. And Stuart played. He didn't play particularly well, to be honest. I have to be honest. He didn't really. I'd heard this lad's going to Brentford or whatever. So he goes to Brentford, and you know, he didn't really make. It took Stuart a real while to adapt to that side of things. And you know, he went out in loan periods, Northampton, and we were like, he's not really making that much of an impression. And then things just started to click for Stuart, and we brought him into the squad. You know, I remember playing him against Scotland. He played really well. Then we put him on here in the qualifying game against Finland. That was a massive game for us, and he played well when he came on. And when I kind of look back now, I don't think Stuart's really been out of the team since. You know, he's a real player that came to the party a little bit late, but grasped the opportunity. And he's a player now, when I look at the team, you kind of think, you know, he's a player you couldn't do without for us. And that's something, I think the development of Stuart has been one that's, you know, perhaps given me the most satisfaction.
Just to get a word, you said obviously those players' names there, but then you said about Stephen, it made me think of, obviously, it must be good news for you that he's moved clubs and hopefully more of a chance of playing some first team football. Yeah,
it was very frustrating when you've been a player of Stephen's stature, and you know, Stephen's, you only have to go to Southampton to a game to feel how valued Stephen is. You know, they really, behind the scenes there, they loved him. You know, the supporters loved him as well. They recognised how important he was to the team. Whilst he maybe didn't get the headlines, I think everyone recognised that he was such a key figure in the team. But managers change, and other managers come in with different ideas, and Southampton have had a bit of a churn in recent years in terms of manager as well. So he found himself obviously on the wrong side of that you know, the selection process for the current manager, and a little bit under Mark Hughes as well in this season. But you know, Stephen, the good thing for me, and I said it to Stephen before he made the decision, we had a conversation, I said, look, go somewhere where you're going to compete at the top end of the league, go somewhere where you're going to, you know, have the potential to win something, possibly play in Europe, you know, have that experience and whatever. You know, I still believe Stephen has a lot of football left in him. I wouldn't want to put a time frame on that, but I think it's always easier when you're in the latter stages of your career to play in a successful environment as opposed to possibly an environment where you're fighting every week to try and stay in the Premier League, or possibly you're in the Championship playing 46 games a season trying to get into the playoffs or get promotion, or equally in the Championships you can be going for the playoffs and 3 weeks later you're facing relegation, the nature of the Championship. So I think it's a good move for him, and the other thing is it's a club that he loves, which is very important as well. Go somewhere where, and I know that already within having had conversations particularly with Gary McAllister, that I mean, I think that already they've seen the impact, the potential impact that Stephen can make just from him being in the club a week, and so I think it's the right move at the right time for him.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. And just finally, we've got one last question.
Hi Michael, Phil Holmes here. Just want to know, what's your favourite chippy in Northern Ireland?
Don't let it be said that we don't cover the important issues here.
Favourite chippy? It's a tough one. I have to be honest. I'm more a pizza man. If I on the very rare occasion that I would eat late at night, on the way home from the hotel, I would have normally a pizza. So
what would be the pizza? Like Domino's? Are you talking or?
No, I actually don't know the name of it, but there's a great little pizza place beside the Crown Bar.
Right.
Just there,
Little Italy.
Yeah, I think it is. Is it as you're going? Just that round from Sweet Afton round to maybe getting yourself across to Europa, and you feel that you need a little slice of pizza before you go to sleep. So that would be my fast food venue of choice.
Is that something that you crack down on with the team? Like, are they allowed to have a wee pizza, or is it like broccoli?
No, the only time the diets are extremely strict. They're all the food, all the menus are prepared. I mean, the players constantly eat a buffet style, and it can get a little bit monotonous. We try to chop and change it up a wee bit for them. If we can take them for a meal, we would do that if the occasion arises, because they're eating sort of breakfast. They're all eating together in the same room. It does wear you down a little bit, and whilst the food is fantastic and it's all well prepared, it just can get a little bit monotonous. But the only time really where they get the likes of that pizza or chips or something is after the game. We don't care what they eat, as long as they eat, because that's the part of refueling that is the most valuable. They have to eat after the game, so trying to get them to come in and putting a salad bar in front of them, they're hungry. So a lot of the teams now actually they have pizzas in the dressing room after the game. That's pretty standard in most clubs, because for players I think it's the easiest thing for them to eat as well. After a game when you're hungry, you can just grab a slice of pizza, you can walk to the bus or whatever. It's not like a sit down process. What we have done in recent years as well, when we've played away and we've had to travel, we try and get as close as we can to a meal at the ground, and the players eat that. So even, for example, when we played in Dublin recently, there was like pizza, but there was like chicken curry, that type of food that it's different what they've had all week, so then they really relish it when it comes, but then they just switch on the next day. But the players nowadays, you don't really have to concentrate. Some of the younger ones need guidance, because they still don't really understand it. We still see some of the younger boys coming in with their spar bag full of sweeties and crisps, like they still have that to deal with a little bit.
You thought they would sneak that, right?
You would think, no, they're not very good at that, to be honest. But the senior players don't really need too much. They're used to it. They're ingrained in it in their clubs, and the days of players carrying weight and being overweight, I think, are behind us now. And the only danger you have with players a little bit is if they're in that environment in the hotel and they're not playing and they're possibly not training, there's a danger that they could overeat a little bit, because you don't, when they're in their house, they're not away, they don't eat like that when they're at home. They don't go in and sit and have a buffet breakfast. They don't go and have, like they'll maybe get up in the morning and have a bowl of cereal and a banana. They can still do that, but when there's more temptation there, you maybe tend to eat differently than what you would do, and it's trying to keep them as regular as possible is probably a bit more the challenge rather than what they're eating, to be honest.
Man, thanks for answering all those questions. Just wanted to finish on, it's just 2019, very simply. Obviously, Euro 2020 qualification. Obviously, I assume the aim is to have maximum points before we come up against Holland and Germany.
Well, that would be the dream scenario. It won't be easy, that really. We have to make sure that we don't slip up at home. Estonia and Belarus, but Belarus are already guaranteed a playoff through their Nations League. They won their Nations League group, albeit I think it was at the League C or League D rather. So I think those games are going to be crucial to build that momentum. You're right. The June games are always difficult, and a double header in June is equally different, and also a double header away from home like that is difficult, because the preparation is more difficult. You're changing hotel. We'll probably stay in a training camp in Europe. we'll then go to a hotel in Estonia, we'll then go to a hotel in Belarus, so we'll have 3 hotels to deal with, 3 different styles of food potentially to deal with as well, so there's a lot for us to deal with there, and it was quite difficult when we did it in the Nations League, where we were in Austria in a base that we used before the Euros, which was fantastic. Vienna was great, but then when we went to Bosnia and Sarajevo, the hotel there wasn't just of the same standard in terms of the food, so that makes it a little bit more difficult, and that will be the double header in June will be difficult. But if we can get the points that we hope to get, then really when the games come around in September, we're essentially going to be in a mini group with Germany and Holland, a group of 3, and there is the potential for us to possibly have a little bit of a gap over one of them, depending on how their games go against each other as well. So there's a lot of variables there, but the main thing for me is that we focus on ourselves, and that means, you know, maintain the level of performances that I think we've had, but obviously we need to turn those performances into results, and if we do that in the first 4 games, you know, who knows what can happen in games 5 to 8.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time and for all your insight. Just to say, if you have any thoughts or things you'd like to see on the podcast, just email us at podcast@irishfay.com, or you can tweet us at Northern Ireland with potential ideas or guests you'd like to hear on. But for today and for Michael, thank you very much for watching and for listening. Goodbye.
Armstrong! Northern Ireland have scored through Jerry Armstrong.
It's a good ball. The flag stays down. Heaney! Oh!
They scored again! It's Davis again! It's job done now!